NRL Fantasy Buy, Hold, Sell is back, brought to you by the Casual Athlete. Longy and Biz here to talk to you about everything you need to know for round 17. First off the ranks here, we've got the buy of the week, the big man himself. It's Jacob Preston here. Now, Biz, I know he's high on your list, mate. So are you getting on Jacob Preston this week, and why?
I'll just take a second to talk about the fancy retro-style graphics first. We've been cooking this week, Longy, and this is some high-tech production. It feels like I'm on ESPN or something. But honestly, Jacob Preston, look, we called it at the start of the year. We're very bullish on him, potentially said he could be the best edge. He came out in his rookie season and killed it. He's just hasn't been on the field that long this year. Had a few injury suspensions, whatnot. But look, 771K, averaging 60-odd, plays round 18, round 19. I personally love this buy. I think he'll be a pod. Well, he is a pod right now. He might not be at the end of this week. But look, in terms of the upside, strong ball runner, definitely knows how to find the try line. He's been scoring a lot of tries this year. In fact, that could be a knock if you believe that can't keep that up. But look, Bulldogs should be getting better. They've had an origin period where they've lost their tailspin, Stephen Crichton. They've got Galvin in the side now, and we know how good Galvin is on those edges. Look, I think there's a lot of upside to Preston. And what I love about him is he's just got work rate. Last year he relied on some attacking stats. This year, he's just getting the ball more often. He's not sharing with Salmon or whoever be. I think he's going to be right up there with Colin Matangi and Couchman and those guys for best edge. And what a time to buy him ahead of the round 18 buy. Very minuscule chance of origin. I would say close to zero chance of origin this year. I think next year he's definitely going to be in the picture. That suspension kind of crueled his chances this year, but I really like Jacob Preston. It's really a question for me this week. Do I want Jacob Preston or do I want his buddy Jacob Kiraz? And I'll let you handle Kiraz because I know you've got some thoughts on him.
Yeah, just on Preston too, ranked number 2 at the position. So he's ahead of quite a few guys that we do rate probably equal to or above. But he's sitting behind Hudson Young, who is being rested this week, plays Origin round 18, has a bye round 19, and has been very, very try-scoring reliant. So, yeah, Preston's a bona fide stud at the position. And he's a guy that I'm looking pretty closely at, as is Jacob Kiraz here too. Now, on Kiraz, dual position's fantastic. You got the center and the wing fullback coverage. He plays round 18 and round 19. He is a risk of playing Origin. So he was brought into camp for game 2 when Brian Tor was in a bit of doubt there. There was a bit of talk that he might not make the game. So if he didn't play, it meant Kiraz was the backup winger. So it means he's the backup for Lomax and Tor. Now, the Dogs play the first game of this round. So you don't get to wait and see and watch those guys, see if they get through unscathed. That is genuinely a risk that he does get sucked into Origin if there's an injury. But I wouldn't not buy a guy due to that one factor alone. I think that's a bit too cautious and too pessimistic for me. So I still think he's a great option. The question then becomes, do you want to spend up big on him and do you view him as a season-long keeper? Now, averaging 57 so far, pumping out multiple offloads a game, more offloads than last year too. I think it's 4 offloads a game this year compared to 2 last year. But is he better than Latrell? Is he better than these other guys? And Latrell doesn't play round 18, round 19, so you can't get Latrell now. But is it a bit too prohibitive to spend up big there when you've already got guys like Jaden Campbell, James Tedesco, maybe even Drinkwater?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I do love Jacob Kiraz for his dual position this year. In terms of, ignoring the origin factor, round 18, round 19 coverage is excellent. Is he your best centers? No, you got Herbie, you got Lucas. Is he your best fullbacks? Like you said, you got Trell, you got Jaden Campbell, who's better. Fletcher Sharp. I know he's out for a long period, but to end the season, if he does come back, do you want him back in your squad? I think Kiraz could be the third best wing fullback this year. I do have him below Trell, do have him below Jaden Campbell. I think after that, it's anyone's game. I'd put him pretty much equal with Tedesco. I personally think I like Tedesco a bit more, but Kiraz has that dual position. So really interesting proposition. Truth be told, I'm looking at one of Preston or Kiraz, but it's a difficult proposition to choose between each one. Look at your team balance and make the call. I think they're great options. I think Preston is more a bona fide scorer, but I think Kiraz has more utility with that dual position.
Yeah, Kiraz, cracking option here, Biz. Now, just a quick word from one of our partners.
Last week in NRL Fantasy was brutal. We finished the round with Jaden Campbell going off early for a HIA, Riley Smith getting benched and then also hurt, and now Fletcher Sharp looking like he's facing a stint on the sidelines too. When you're feeling good, you can usually laugh that stuff off. It's part of the game. When you're already struggling, whether it's fantasy or just life in general, moments like that can really pile on. That's why today's video is a paid partnership with BetterHelp. BetterHelp is an online platform that makes starting therapy simple and flexible. When you sign up, you fill out a short questionnaire and you get matched with a credentialed therapist tailored to your needs. You can message them anytime or schedule phone calls or video chats, whatever suits you best. It's all online, so it fits around your life. If you've been feeling overwhelmed, stuck, or just want someone to talk to, BetterHelp is a great place to start. Use the link in the description, that's betterhelp.com/casual athlete to support the channel and to get 10% off your first month. Thanks to BetterHelp for jumping on board, and thank you to you guys for tuning in.
Now on to Jerome Hughes, Biz. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, Jerome Hughes, Longy. Look, I'm not sure I'm sold on Jerome. A try for a 45-point game. He just hasn't looked that good this year. Like, he had that one explosive 85-point game, but he's not doing much. Like, he got 590 odd kick meters last week, plus a try for 45 points. Look, at 600K, there's no real downside. But if I'm trading someone like a Nico Hines is doing the same thing. He's underperforming. He's just shouldering along. Like, I don't know if I'm making that trade, but in terms of what's to like, I mean, he's had 2 seasons in the last 5 years where he's averaged 60 plus. Storm are done with their buys, plays round 18. Relatively soft draw for the Melbourne Storm going ahead. He could catch fire, and we've seen when Hughes is on form, he's getting hot. He can be an absolute beast. So there's a lot to like. There's a lot to not like. It's really make a call. Make an assessment on why you think he's been depressed this year. I know a lot of people have said, he's had injury troubles, but he's healthy now, and he's still only, he didn't pop out a big score in a high-scoring game last week. So I know you're more bullish on Jerome Hughes than me, Longy. Did he make your squad last week? And if he didn't, is he in your squad this week?
Yeah, so I didn't trade at all last week. I held off.
You still got Munster.
Yeah. And I think Munster could be a season keeper, by the way. Like, he pumped out big meters again last week. The attacking stats will come back. Like, I reckon he's a stud. Jerome Hughes, the run meters and the tackle breaks, they fell back down again last week. That was the big concern for me. So I don't mind if he doesn't score tries. I wouldn't mind a 45-point game if he ran 120 meters and had 4 tackle breaks. That's what I'm looking for there. But a 45-point game with a try, I think it was around 50 meters run, not a lot of attacking play. And they sort of struggled with that too. So, I mean, I look at the matchups though coming up, and I still just think he is all gravy, this guy. And he's priced at about a 44, 45. He produced that 45 last week. There's no way between now and the end of the season he averages below 50. I just don't see it. I think the fixtures they have are too good. And I think if you're getting him in, like, what are your other options here? You can get Jerome Hughes. You could spend up a bit more and get Adam Reynolds for 656K. We'll talk about him in the pods as well. Go cheap. You go down to the bottom and go Latu Finu at 298K. We're going to talk about the cheapies there. But when it comes to Jerome Hughes, I just think he's the one with the most upside there. And, that potential for a streaky run is definitely there for him and this next guy as well. Big bad Eli Katoa. We're going to talk about now. So 687K for Katoa. He was at a 47 last week for his score. You're not pumped about that? I saw a lot of people posting their scores in Discord saying, I scored this, but I had Eli Katoa's let down. It's like, it's a 47, guys. Let's calm down. So the 47 for him without attacking stats, I think you can live with that. I think that's very survivable because you go 47 without attacking stats. You have a few big attacking games, which is normally what he does. And you have those 70-point games and the average sort of floats up to 55, 60 points. So if you can't afford Jacob Preston, who I think is a tier above Katoa, you save yourself 90K. He's a pretty good option.
Yeah, I don't mind Eli Katoa. I have him at the same kind of level as a Sua Wong type player this year. I think low 50s average, or I think Preston is a high 50s guy. The thing with Eli Katoa is that I love Eli Katoa, and I agree with everything you've said. The only thing is this year is not like last year. There was not that many good edges. You had Angus Crichton, and there was David Fafita, and there was not much else. This year, you've got Hudson Young carving up. You've got Jacob Preston carving up. You got those dual position guys like Couchman, Coleman, Tungy. Is a low 50s edge really a keeper this season? I mean, that's the really question. And if you think that's the case, or if you think Katoa can beat that low 50s and go to more 55 to 60 average to end the year, then I think he's a great pick. I do think he's a good buy. I'm not downplaying this whatsoever. But if you're tight on trades, I'm not personally sure I'd be going for Katoa if you have other guys you could get that will do better in the run home. Because with Katoa, I'm not sure if he would fit into my final 17. Definitely not my final 13, but I can see him being a 16th, 17th man. But look, that's a tricky situation. But I'm downplaying it, but I am hot on Katoa. Like, I'm considering him this week if I can't afford Preston. Damien Cook is one guy I'm not considering. I was very close to pulling the trigger on Cook for round 15. Didn't do it. He scored a try in like the first minute. And not really, but he scored a try early, and I was like, here we go again. But 55 to 60 minutes, I mean, I don't love it. Like, he needs 75 minutes to 80 minutes. And it just seems that when there's no injuries to the Dragons pack, he's a 55 to 60 minute player. And the only times he gets up to 75 plus is when there's an injury, which, to be frank, is quite often. But I personally don't have a hooker for round 18 at the moment, and I don't think I'd still be getting Cook. Wow. I honestly think I'm keeping a blank hooker for that round, and I'll talk about who I'll get later in the episode. But look, just a no for me. I just don't believe in the minutes after seeing what happened in round 15 minutes wise.
Yeah. See, they've changed their team around a bit though. Like they've brought Fafita onto the bench as well, who's a low minutes rookie there. Hamish Stewart got very low minutes in that last game too. We're seeing Toby Couchman playing more of that Dylan Egan role as well. So I personally look at that and I think Cook could be in line for more minutes, but it's total speculation, man. Like I'm looking at that and sort of thinking he might. I also think the matchup against Parramatta this week is pretty enticing. As much as we were solid, we did let Jamin Jolliffe walk through for a try in the 3rd minute. So Damien Cook is the kind of guy who could grab a try against us. And I don't know. I think he's a great option. If you need a hooker, I'd be recommending you get Damien Cook 100%. So from my side, I'm personally vaguely considering it because I got Riley Smith and I've got Jazz Tavanga. I need a forward. I can, with flexibility, get any position in the forward pack there. I am pondering Damien Cook as an option as well. So I could see him sort of being the issue is it's not quite keeper territory, right? Being that sort of 50 to 55 average to the run home, which isn't quite good enough, but the buy coverage helps.
Look, the 50-55 in the hooker position this year, I'd argue, is a keeper. Like, you got Aaron Clark, who's beasting that, but then who's behind him? No. So, I mean, Damien Cook could be a keeper. Look, Damien Cook, for me to consider is I would have to watch him this week, and if he does get a big minute role, I'll think about him next week. But I don't have the confidence to buy him this week. So, less positive on Damien Cook than you are.
Yeah, Cookie Monster. I mean, I'm seriously considering him, but it's a tough one because a lot of these guys, all 5 of these guys are hot form run guys. Like they're guys who can get hot and attack, right? So I think if you're at home and you're just watching and you're thinking, all right, do I get Eli Katoa, Jacob Preston? Do I get Cook? Do I go Hughes or Carraz? These types of guys. Have a look at the teams. Have a look at the fixtures. Do I think the Dogs are going to tear up? Because we talked about it before. The Dogs have a pretty good run home. The Storm have a great run home. They got some great fixtures coming up. The Storm have the Cowboys in round 18, which was an enticing game. The Dolphins put 58 on them. So that's where I'm kind of leaning towards some of these Storm players. It's just an early strike, right? Big points injection. And then that bumps the average up across a smaller period by 5 or 10 points. So that's kind of how I see it, but it is pretty fun. Now, we're on to something that's a bit more straightforward here. Cheapie of the week. And I'm just going to get to it because I'm new to these graphics, but we're going to get to it pretty soon. It's coming. There it is. Big man himself. We've got Latu Fainu in the 7 jersey. I'm going to smooth this up over coming weeks, but hey, I love the way they look. I'm a big fan.
They look great, Longy. They look honestly great. Like, far out. Beautiful.
Yeah, I'll get a job at ESPN next. But look, Latu Fainu, 298K. He's priced at a 22. He's been pumping out a pretty low average so far. The reserve grade average is in that sort of low 30s area, about a 31, 32. So reserve grade numbers aren't anything to write home about for Latu Fainu. Is he a guy you're looking at right now, Biz, or are you going somewhere else on this cheapie list?
Man, Latu Fainu seems the type where his stats don't back up his ability. Like that 31 average, I thought he would be a Kane Elgey type. I spoke about it last week. But I see him on the field, and he's a big, beastly unit, breaks tackles, runs the ball, plays a lot like a bigger Isaiah Katoa, like really direct, square hips at the line. I loved watching him play, and I think him next to Luai could be a great combination. I think at 298k, I think he's locked up. He's half for the rest of the year. That's my thoughts. I don't think Heath Mason is taking that space back. I actually think, though, like I said last week, that roaming lock role he played for 20, 30 minutes was more beneficial for his scoring because he didn't mind getting in and having a tackle, having a run. But I think at 298k, I do need a half for next week. He's going straight into my squad this week. And am I expecting a lot from him? No, I'm not expecting him to be a 17 guy. I'm expecting him to kind of be like a King Togia type sitting at the bottom of my 21. And he'll have some big scores here and there. I am excited about his potential for round 18, though, because Luai will be playing Origin, bar some random setback. And I think at that point, Fainu and Mason in the halves, well, I don't know, maybe they'll have Coruscant in the halves. That could happen. There could be some kick meters on offer. But look, I like the on-field signs for him. And maybe the Tigers are just set up for him a bit better than his reserve grade team was for scoring. He did score a 50 against Para at the end of last year. But I do think it's going to be more close to a 30-odd average. But priced at 22, like you had in that lovely graphic, I think why not?
Yeah, I think he's a red hot option. Like, the upside is there, the job security is there. I think what we've seen from halves as well this year is they'll come in, they'll start a bit slow, and they'll sort of wind up. So Hugo Savala, very small role to start and really sort of grew into it. Josh Papali'i, we saw him play a relatively limited role last week where he was playing a simple job and he'll wind up into it. You know, even like in King Tonga, he has started to open up the attack a bit more in recent weeks too. So I think Latu Fine is one where you could plug him in and he could be a bit of an edge of bench guy towards the end of the year. Heath Mason at the Tigers is another option here. So Dream Buller out for 4 to 6 weeks is pretty interesting here. And if you're thinking about a wing fullback for this period and you don't want to spend up big now, but you want a guy who's a relatively reliable scorer, Heath Mason's historical average is close to 40 at fullback in first grade. That's with 1 try across 4 games. And I think it's 1 try assist as well. So very low attacking stat output in a Tigers side that was getting absolutely brutalized through that period. They're better now. If you think the Tigers are decent, he could potentially be a bit of a Jai grade 2.0 here at 318k and with great buy coverage over 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I have to look at my squad once again, but if I do need a fullback for next week, I might be considering Mason as well, just to make some money. But in saying that, this year, not as strapped for cash as usual. So if I'm not going to be using him that often, I don't need him for round 18. I'll skip him. I've already got Munro, who's a third on this list, so I'll cover off this Karapani, Munro, Simis. That's Simis Sug. That's a bit odd.
Simis Sastangi for the turtle, man.
Far out, mate. Look, hey, he's starting this week. I mean, I'll start with Karapani. I was actually tossing him up last week, and we did say on the show that he looks to be a good option. But how long are they going to keep Cobo out? Well, looks like now that they're actually actively shopping Cobo. Rumors that there's a couple of teams going after him with the Cowboys and Dragons both are interested before the June 30 deadline, which is
soon, man.
Well, it's very soon. This is in New York time.
Mate, you're an accountant by trade. You know June 30. Don't pretend you don't have it tattooed on your arm.
I'm actually in New York now, so it's December 31st.
Yeah.
Also, I'm a finance guy. Thank you. I'm not an accountant.
By trade, back in the day.
Back in the day.
Humble foundations.
My old days. Look, June 30, big day. We'll find out more about Cobo. But if Cobo leaves Karapani, 2 doubles in a row, Broncos have looked good in both games he's played. I don't think it's really a function of dropping Cobo, but I don't think they're going to drop Karapani after 2 doubles. I think he's a good option. We spoke about Munro last week. I think the narrative doesn't change. Look, Munro and Alex Johnson have easy roles in that team. Stay on your wing, catch the high balls, and catch the pass from Latrell and stroll over the line for as many tries as you can. I think Munro's going to have a hat trick sooner rather than later, where he just catches 3 balls and falls over the line, doesn't have to do much. I think that's he's going to lead to some big price rises, has a good buy schedule as well. So both Karapani and Munro play 18. Munro doesn't play round 19, but look, if you're playing Munro in round 19, you're probably in trouble anyway. And Simi here, look, when he starts, he's pretty solid. Hudson Young misses this week, rested, will miss next week for Origin, and then they've got the buy in round 19. Look, can you really afford to use trades on 2-week temporaries? well, maybe you can. Maybe they'll rest Hudson Young more often if whatever he's carrying is a longer term management issue. He did get some extra minutes last week because they hooked. They didn't hook him, but they took Hudson off Young a bit earlier than normal. He usually plays 80 minutes, played about 60 odd last week. So there is some potential there. I personally think it's a very luxury buy, and I wouldn't be doing it. But to each their own. Jed Stewart, did you get on him last week?
Yeah, I mean, another Raider, right? So I just hopped onto him, but 240K, I didn't jump on. Historical average in reserve grade is like a 26. Grabbed a try in that game, scored a 30. Won't score too many tries on that edge, though. The ball doesn't usually come out that way. I guess if Hudson Young isn't playing, then maybe they, go away from him. He's a try-scoring machine, right? So if he's not there, maybe they go to the wings a bit more. But Jed Stewart's here because he's a cash out. He's a cash out. He's 240K. He has very good job security. He will fill a spot. And if you're really desperate, then you go for a guy like him. And that group there in general is pretty messy, but they're all kind of in that bow stock sort of box. That's why I've put Karapani, Munro, and Simi Sasangi together, because they could potentially get super hot at the right time. And, Karapani, you mentioned doubles there. Alex Johnson scored like 70 points last week on the other wing. And Munro, he didn't get that score, but it could go his way any given week. So, yeah, I just reckon if you're desperate, you could take a flyer on one of these guys. They're all a bit spicy, different scoring profiles. Sasangi, though, for Turtles, we got to shout him out. He's been on Sasangi for a few weeks now. And if he keeps starting in the back row, he's going to keep on pumping out some decent scores. So I think Sasangi's kind of underrated at this point, which is crazy to say, and Turtle will love that. Now, last two here, and it's a bit of veteran play. Cody Walker, Jack Bird. it's a messy list this week, man. Latu Finu is the cheapie of the week. The rest of it is crazy. Cody Walker, 315K, though. He is so cheap. And Jack Bird's around, I think, 312K. So I'm looking at them too and thinking, another year I might have done it. But this year, I just think they're a little too injury prone. The roles aren't right. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, I actually don't mind the Walker pick. I think his job security is really high. He's going to be that starting six. I think Rabbits, when they're fully fit, are a pretty decent team. Thing is, he's not going to get kick meters this year because Latrell and Humphreys just dominate the kick meters, mostly Trell. But I will say that Walker at 315K is a lot of value, but he just can't stay on the park. That calf is troubling him. He's not going to get any younger. Look, if Fainu wasn't there, I would be considering him a lot more heavily. But I think if I had to choose one cheap half, and I already have Lycan King Togia, I don't think I could do Togia, Fainu, and Walker. So I think I will skip Walker. I like Walker more than Bird. I think Bird is just really a utility Mr. Fix-It guy. They brought him in. They clearly didn't see a lot from him in the preseason because they didn't give him big minutes like we expected. Bird was like one of the most owned to start the year and then didn't get the role we all thought. But Walker, we know what he can do. We know he's a leader of that Souths team, and he'll be the 6 when he's fit. Question is, how long can he stay fit at his age and his struggling calf? I don't believe it.
You get him next week. That's the answer to that question. If you like Cody Walker, you buy him the week you plan to play him, and you don't leave any room for anything else. Doesn't play round 19 though, so that's a bit messy.
Could he play Origin?
I mean, Walker, it wasn't that long ago that Walker was in that Origin conversation. But for Jack Bird, starting in the edge back row spot, I just don't like it. Like, you got Sukar on the bench there as well as Seyfarth. They're both guys who can play in that role. I think arguably better players than Jack Bird as an edge back row. I like Bird, but I think those two are stronger on the edge. So I think you can pretty safely steer clear of these two. But if you do want to take a real speculator, there are worse bets you could take than these couple of guys. So pod of the week, our man here, Reece Walsh, 497K, priced at a 37. 2024 he averaged 54, and 2023 he averaged 48. That's some pretty big seasons in the past, and he's been a stone cold killer. And I know, Beers, you've jumped on this one before. How are you feeling about Reece Walsh right now?
I did buy Reece Walsh earlier in the season, just a couple of weeks before he got injured. Got 2 okay scores out of him, nothing fancy. He's come back from injury with 2 50-plus scores, one of them with a double and one of them with no tries, but a lot of try involvements. Look, it was a real simple equation for me. If he would looked fit, he's in my side. I had 500K and Ezra Mann back at 6. and Broncos back on the way up. I think I prefer Walsh at 500k than Kiraz at 720k. But, in the runs he took last week in those line breaks, he looked hobbled. He was heavily strapped up. He was not at full speed. And Walsh is supremely an explosive athlete, first and foremost. Speed, agility, ability to weave in traffic. That's Walsh's game. And if he's that strapped up and he's lagging behind, he's still got that acceleration clearly to be making those line breaks, but his top speed looked bad. And I don't know. He's got a decent break even this week. I think the good thing about the Walsh is that the fact that Queensland won game 2 means that Ponga is safe in that spot. I really love Reece Walsh as a player. I know he's polarizing for a lot of the fan base. I think he's an absolute beast. He's only 22 or 23 now. Only upside. I think there's going to be time, in his career where he's going to be the top wing fullback in fantasy. It's not going to be this year, maybe not next year, but I think it's not far off. Look, I'm going to assess that. I want to watch that game back one more time and look at his running and how hampered he was. If I think he's close to being full speed, full strength with that leg again, I reckon I'm buying Reece Walsh. If anything, it's just sentimental. It's just my love for a non-fantasy player in real life. Love watching him play. Might not be the best decision, but hey, I need to catch up some points. So Walsh is the type of guy who can get me that.
Well, shout out too. He's at that same sort of price point as a couple of guys. So Reece Walsh is there. You've shouted it out. He's an upside guy. Ryan Pappenhausen's here too. A bit more expensive. I will mention Ponga on the side as well. Ponga's obviously not someone you're buying before Origin 3, but definitely one that has some potential for the run home. Newcastle looking a bit better, and with Sharp now out for an extended period. So it's about Ponga more in round 19. But Ryan Pappenhausen, quiet game last week, pretty disappointing, along with a lot of the Storm players. I sort of lean towards just, forgiving that one and just saying, you know what, it was a bit of a low involvement, sort of clunky game for the Storm. They nearly got beaten by South Sydney. Souths have been doing that to teams this year. I think the Storm are going to have some very flat track sort of games this year. And if I was tossing up between this 3-wing fullbacks, we'll talk about Lehigh Hopewadi in a sec as well. I kind of rule out Walsh this week because I've heard it's going to be very rainy, very wet for their game this week. So that sort of makes me think, that knee issue, bit of rain, doesn't really suit Reece Walsh, in my view. Whereas Pappenhausen, if it's dry conditions with a good matchup this week, I could see him carving up. That's kind of where I'm leaning. But I just then look at it and go, all right, would you spend 626K on him? Because he's not a cut price guy, really. He's not that much cheaper than the other options. So I couldn't bring myself to do it because I think he's too awkward in the middle there. But he is totally one of those guys who can get hot at the right time and could carry you through some real head-to-head wins and overall rank rises.
Yeah, I think he's got a couple of big scores in him, some 80 pluses, but he does have the quieter game. I do like the fact that he's got the goal kicking back, which gives him a good base. So, look, like you talked about Jerome Hughes versus the Cowboys in round 18. Look, Pappy could go to town in that game as well. So, look, I don't mind the buy. I was a bit lower on him last week than you were when we spoke about him, but I think now we're kind of at the same level. I think there is some upside. I think for guys who want to catch up some ranks, going with Campbell, going with those sorts of guys is not going to help you catch ranks. A lot of players have in the top echelon. So I don't mind the Pappy. Hopewade, this is an interesting one because it sounds like from what Seabold is saying is that Turbo is going to play center, roaming fullback. So very unclear what they're actually going to be doing.
It is weird, isn't it? And they're like going to swap it back at some point. Like they're
not sure.
It sounds like BS to me. I think they're moving Hopewadi in full time.
Yeah, I do too. But in fact, I don't know if I would have moved Hopewadi to fullback or Kohler to fullback. Like it's a hard one because they both have played really well at fullback when they've been there, better than Turbo the last couple of years. So I mean, this is off topic for this particular buy, but would you have picked Kohler at the back or Hopewadi at the back? I personally would have gone Kohler.
Kohler's so dynamic, man, but Hopewadi is so safe. Like Hopewadi's a real fullback, whereas Kohler's
he's a real
freak. Like,
he's a dynamic runner. Hopewadi's a bit more all round. But look, I think at 517K there is upside. He hasn't traditionally lit the world on fire at fullback. Like he's had some big games, but some lower games. Good buy schedule. Play next week. Am I doing it personally? I think I'd prefer Reece Walsh myself. But I think I would prefer Hopewadi over Pappenhausen just for that 100K pocketed. But if money wasn't a problem, I'm still getting Pappenhausen over the other two. This is just for value picks for players who are tighter on cash and need to move up the ranks.
So I'll just chime in. I would say Hopewadi over Walsh if I was certain that Hopewadi was going to play fullback. So 44 historical average with very low try scoring production. As a young guy who is on the up and developing in a Manly side that probably are relying on him to be the savior a bit. I think if he was guaranteed to keep that spot, I'd be jumping on Hopewadi at 517K. And then we roll down the list here to an alternate hooker, Appy Coruscant. We talked about him a few weeks back. He has a great buy schedule coming up, but they have Talon De Silva sitting on the bench. Talon De Silva's chatting to other clubs, maybe going to Parramatta potentially, maybe somewhere else. Hopefully Parramatta. I'd love to see him and Riley Smith in tandem. But for Coruscant, I think he needs that 80 minutes there. And 630K for a guy who can come out and score 25 points in a given week. Also has that 100+ upside. It's a real streaky pod. And when we talk about pods, we're talking about guys that could either win you your league or totally destroy you. Coruscant is the definition of that.
Yeah, the good thing about Coruscant is he plays around 18. The problem is he's not priced any real differently to a Harry Grant. And I think
it's crazy. Yeah.
Would I rather just sack the hooker for round 18 and have Harry Grant rest of year? Definitely I would. So I think I will be skipping Coruscant. We haven't talked about him because he doesn't play next week, but Jaden Brayley is a guy that I'm looking at for similar, like if he's giving me good production, 375K, I'd rather take that and not have him for round 18 than have Coruscant. He's neither here nor there.
Job security though for Brayley is
job security is not good, but Barry Toohey, mate, he is the Knights whisperer. If he reckons Brayley's going to be playing hooker big minutes for a while, that's all I need to know. I don't need any of my own analysis.
And they've let him go for next year, so
it's ridiculous to me. But apparently they're loving Crossland at lock. I don't know. I think I don't talk down on any players in real life, but I don't know about that. I don't know about Crossland at lock. But anyway.
Yeah, I'm surprised by that one. I mean, there's a few hookers you could talk about, like Tom Starling is around. I know you liked him before, but not really it now. Croker's been dropped, so Jazz is back to hooker. Does Simpkin play big minutes there? He's pretty expensive now as well. Iolu's still at that 300K mark. Like the hooker spot's a mess, and to be honest, the halves spot is a mess too here. So we jump to Adam Reynolds. The reason I've included him here is he's a pretty juicy little pod. 656K, started the year super hot. If you think the Broncos are going to light it up down the stretch, he's potentially going to be the big beneficiary. Now, historically, he's not been much. He's been that sort of 50 to 52 average, but the start of this year, he showed that upside. And that's where I think maybe you could take a specky on him. I'm not going to do it personally. I'm not really considering that deeply, but if you want to jump on a cut price, sort of pseudo keeper half, and you want to pay a bit more than Jerome Hughes, Reynolds' scoring profile is much safer than Hughes's. He's a bit older. He does get injured a bit, but I don't mind him as a shout.
Yeah, I think Reynolds has showed it this year when Broncos are running right that he's a benefactor of that. The thing with Reynolds is, other than Cleary, there's no real guaranteed second weapon half. Like you got Jaden Campbell and Isaiah Katoa, but after that, Hines has been average, DC has been average, Mose has been average. Reynolds is not like. He's not up below any of them. So he's definitely worth the punt, I think, if you wanted a pod half and you already have Cleary and a guy like Katoa. So I don't mind that one bit.
He is pricey though, man. Like look at Nico Hines, who's 50K cheaper. Actually a bit more than that now. There's a lot of sort of cheaper halves on offer right now too. So I don't know. I might just end up riding Hugo Savala into the sunset here and just sort of saying, you know what? His scoring's been good enough. He's actually borderline looking like a keeper, Hugo Savala, which is pretty crazy when you consider that he came in and we sort of thought, oh, yeah, we'll plug him in. We'll score a 30 in the bye rounds. We'll sort of see what happens there.
He does have 55 reserve grade average, Savala, so he is a beast. He just needs to make sure he keeps those kick meters when Sam Walker's back. That's the only thing.
Yeah, Sam Walker a couple of weeks away. And now onto our hold of the week. Hold of the week, it's Scotty Drinkwater. And yes, I made a graphic for hold of the week. I know it's a bit dramatic, but you know what? I was having fun. Scott Drinkwater, 549K, average 46.6 so far. Priced at a 41, so a bit of a discount. Has a 70-point break even this week. So it's not an ideal scenario when you look at Scotty Drinkwater, but at 549K, he was priced at like 720K a month ago. You've got to hold on to him at this stage. You know, great buy coverage. He still is the same guy. They've just had a couple of really bad weeks as a club, the Cowboys. Now they've moved back to Purdue at center. They've moved back to Clifford at half spot. I think Drinkwater is borderline a buy this week up against the Titans. What do you think, Biz?
Yeah, I mean, I've had Drinkwater for 5 or 6 weeks, if not longer now. I think, look, he's still the same, just like you said. Like, this is an opportunistic buy. He's had a couple of bad scores in a row. He had 260 plus scores not that long before that. So I think he had a 56 and a 62 over 2 weeks before that. I think he's going to average close to mid 50s in the run home, and you're getting him at a 40 odd pricing at 550k. Plays next week. Next week versus the Storm. Could be another trash score, to be honest, but he did score pretty well against the Storm more recently. He came up with a 60-odd against the Storm a few weeks ago. So that was against the full-strength Storm team, I think. It wasn't against the Origin-affected Storm. Look, at 550k, I think he's definitely, if he's not a keeper, he's close to it at the fullback position. He's spottier than the others, but he does have high upside, and he does have the goals this year. So he's got, well, look, I'd say a better base, but it's hard to say a better base about someone who's come off a 14 and a 31.
No, you're right, though. History suggests that he should be about a 55 average this year. So unless you think the Cowboys are going to stay terrible, right?
I think 550k, I'm definitely, like we talked about Hopewadi, Walsh, Pappenhausen. I'm taking Drinkwater over those guys. Obviously, I didn't speak about it because he was in the old section, but I am not trading Drinkwater now. I am not selling Drinkwater. I'm definitely holding Drinkwater, and as a non-owner, I would be buying Drinkwater. If not this week, then definitely next week for round 18. And then
segue, man, because we're talking about Purdue as well.
Purdue, yeah. I mean, I don't know how his ownership is going now, how many people held on to him, but the halves experiment didn't really work out in a real life perspective for the Cowboys. He did have a couple of decent scores in the halves in fantasy, but look, are you still on the Purdue train?
I'm on the Purdue Express, man. I'm actually just checking.
I'll let you cover him then. Yeah.
Oh no, look, I'm like, it's pretty simple for me, man. Like Jackson Purdue, you know, he's priced at a 36. At center, he was averaging 40 plus. He's owned by 19% of the top 100 and about 29% of the top 5,000. So around that 25% of top teams have Jackson Purdue. Look, I think he's a hold. Like, what are you doing at center for round 18 if not Jackson Purdue? So I've got like Purdue, I've got Turbo, I've got Garrick, you know, floating around. I'm not selling any of these guys. Like their numbers for round 18. I'm not piddling around with any extra trades that I don't need to for round 18. We are just maximizing points. And the Titans match up this week back at center. Will Penasini scored 2 tries last week. I don't remember the last time Penasini scored 2 tries, but he did it last week, right? Jackson Purdue could score 4. So I reckon he's in for a big game this week. And I'm tempted to buy Drinkwater and stack up a couple of discount Cowboys.
Yeah, I agree with that approach. I think Purdue, you're 100% right. Like, you're definitely holding him to the round 18. There's not many good centers. Like, everyone will have Herbie, everyone will have Lucas. They're not there in round 18. So center is a difficult position. If you got Purdue, hold him for round 18. I think he's a good sell candidate for round 19 or 20. Time to upgrade him to a gun after that buy period. But until then, hold. Jaden Campbell, I don't think we need to discuss too much about Jaden Campbell. He's a bona fide keeper. He's probably the best fullback in fantasy this year. Cruel HIA for a lot of people like myself brought him in last week for that para matchup. Didn't work out well, but at least I didn't capture him. So I know some did.
Poor Turtles, man. Poor Turtles.
That's why we had to put Simeon there for him.
I remember Turtles asked me too. He goes, should I captain him? And I was like, live by the pod, die by the pod. And he messaged me, die by the pod.
Yeah, that's for sure. Look, HIA misses this week, misses next week for the bye. You're absolutely holding him. I don't think there's much to discuss. He's, like I said, best fullback this year, dual position, and he has shown good signs. Tommy Turbo, easy hold. He's moved to the centers. Look, if he was 700k Tommy Turbo and you're expecting a 50 average out of him, then maybe you sell him. Guy's 400k. He could have been in our cash cow section. He'll get dual position if he stays in the center spot for the next few weeks. And a lot of people are complaining about his last 2 scores. He's had 240-odd scores, but he was 400k. So, is that really so bad? 40-odd score where he can't run. He's not scoring any points, on the field. I think that's good. I personally am stoked with that. If that's his worst at 400k, I'm buying Tommy Turbo at this price.
Yeah.
I mean, I've already got him, but
People looking at him. Like, I didn't want to put him in the buys, but he's here. So anyone who's hanging around, you're seeing it. I'm with you. I think he's a decent option next to Ruben Garrick as well. And we don't mention Garrick here, but Garrick's a hold too on the wing. Garrick's last full season on the wing, he averaged about 46. So it wasn't ideal. But Garrick next to Turbo, you would think that edge gets a bit of ball. I would be very
100%.
surprised if that edge doesn't get a lot of ball. I'm assuming they play together too. They've been named that way. So, yeah, Tommy Turbo is definitely a hold option and potentially a buy option if you want to discount. Would you go Turbo or Mason? It's probably a big question there. I'm probably leaning towards Turbo as an edge of bench type of guy. Maybe goes back to fullback, maybe turns it around. He's just been, really, really dire this year. But yeah, there's a few Manly players. I've actually got 3 Manly players who all copped downgrades this week due to position. So Turbo went to center, Garrick went to wing, and Tavanga went to hooker. And I'm just looking at Manly like, I thought this team would beast. Like, I thought, yeah, they'll smash Parramatta. They'll smash the Titans in the major buy rounds. They got belted by both those teams. They got absolutely belted. They had Daly Tree Evans in the Titans game, and they got smashed by the Titans without their entire Origin forward pack. Like, I have no idea what's happened to Manly, but I own too much of it now not to be a biased Manly supporter. So I'm going to stick with Jazz Tavanga. He's playing at hooker this week. He plays the first 20 minutes at hooker, and he'll play me 30 minutes in the middle, and he'll be a PPM guy when he's in the middle. He'll do nothing at hooker, and he'll score me a 35. That's my guess, right, for Jazz Tavanga. So I'll own Jazz. I'll keep him as that hooker option for round 18, and I'll throw Hosking to you, man.
Yeah, I think Jazz, I think he'll still score 40-odd based on exactly what you said. And you have to keep him for round 18 because there's no real good hookers for that round. I know you said you're high on Cook, but I think if you've got Jazz, just ride Jazz. Look, Hosking, I don't understand it. I don't get it. He's got a great run of fixtures.
Makes no sense.
It doesn't make any sense. Like, where has his scoring gone? He's become a low 40s guy. And you know what? I'm going to ride it out because I'm stubborn. And that's probably why my ranking is lower than it should be. But I'm going to ride Hosking out. He's going
Why is he plotting so hard? Like, he doesn't even look like himself anymore.
He doesn't. Yeah, he's like just become a tackler now. He's not doing anything else. I think, look, Hudson Young being out, I think changes the script a bit. I think Hosking will get equal amounts of ball to Simi. If I see Simi score a hat trick and Hosking gets another 40, I want to go crazy. But I think Hosking is due for one of those big. I think Hosking is going to be like, just plot along to a few 45s and then just give me 170 just to get that average up, Hosking with Wong out is now staying in my team. He's going to be my round 18 edge. He's in my team this week. He's in my starting 17. Well, he's in my 17. And come on, man. You got to give me some love here. You got to give me a 60 plus this week.
He plays round 18. He plays round 18. Like, you hold a guy who's playing round 18. I'm with you there completely.
Yeah.
It's just the form is crazy. Like, there's been a few guys like that this year. So Jermaine Hopgood's the same. He has not looked like himself in the slightest. And you just can't explain exactly why these guys have fallen off a cliff. So now we'll jump across to the cells here. And this is a bit of an easier list. And sorry, some of this is going to hit close to home. I want to talk about Lawson right at the end. Fletcher Sharp's a really easy one. So he is out with a couple of injuries. He's got a lacerated kidney. And what was the other thing? It was a
spleen, I think.
Yeah.
Like a car crash accident. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Real sad to hear. Having a huge season, but look, he's potentially not playing again for the rest of the season, so he's an easy sell.
Hopefully, that stuff though is stuff that heals up and doesn't sort of slow him down next year. Like, you would think that would heal up and he'll come back really good next year. That's kind of what I'm hoping for there. But it does mean 712K. He's a sell. A very popular trade this week. Probably the most popular trade this week is going to be Fletcher Sharp to Jacob Carraz, because the money works out pretty much exactly the same. So you're moving Sharp on. Don't mind Carraz. We've talked about a few other guys: Drinkwater, Lehigh Hopewadi, Pappenhausen, Reece Walsh, Heath Mason. There's this whole spectrum of guys here. I don't mind the idea of going cheaper and stashing a bit of cash for round 19. I actually think that's a pretty viable strategy. But have a look at your team, have a look at your requirements, and figure out if you want to jump on any of these guys. Then Riley Smith up next. And this was frustrating as a Riley Smith and Jaden Campbell owner in that last game. I got 32 and 27 minutes out of my two 80-minute players. So that was a delight to see. But for Riley Smith, he got moved back to the bench for Joey Lussick. Came on, was totally dynamic, pumping out over a PPM, then picked up a couple of injuries there, a laceration on the leg. He then got himself on report. Has been ruled out for 2 to 3 weeks. So he's now out for a while. He's not quite a keeper. I thought I saw great as a para fan. I liked what I saw from him coming off the bench, by the way. I think he'll play really well with another hooker. But I think at 550K, you move him on and you figure out what you're going to do. And from my side, I'm just going to hobble with Jazz for the next 2 weeks at hooker. And I'm going to buy a real hooker in round 19 is probably what I'm going to do, unless I fall into the trap of Damien Cook, but it's quite unlikely.
Yeah, I agree with that approach completely. Bit weird for me to actually see that Riley's share with Lussick again. I don't know what the coach is seeing there. But either way, regardless of Lussick, Riley's ruled himself out. Wong is an easy one. Wong, I think it was a great couple of weeks with him with a couple of huge scores. Unfortunately, MCL, so 4 to 6 weeks. That's a sell for me because he's not in the upper echelon of second rollers. So he's an easy trade to a guy like Preston. I assume everyone has Couchman or Kolomatangi already. You can maybe potentially move Wong to Akashi, but I think there's a lot of flexibility there. I think Wong to Preston is the easiest trade, but maybe you don't need another edge and you can trade him to someone else. Like I don't need an edge, so I don't know what I'll do with Wong yet, but he's an easy sell. Hubner, look, I don't know how many people still have Lockie here, but he's kind of peaked. He's just a kind of 450 to 500K guy max. The only flip side is, well, I don't know. What would you think about Hubner? Like, he's a trickier one, I think.
He played 60 minutes last week and scored 30. And they've got a bench that is stacked this week. So Jai Arrow goes back to lock. Kolomatangi goes back to prop. Their back rowers are in place. Unless Jai Arrow and Kolomatangi made Origin. That would be the only thing that would happen. But they're both not in the Origin team as of today. So I just think the PPM has dropped off. He was relying on some attacking stats previously to bump out those scores, and they've kind of dried up too. Unless you really need it. If you need him for round 18, you can stick with him. I just think there are enough options that we are targeting in round 18 that you probably don't require him. But if he is required for your team, don't trade him to Corey Horsburgh or something like that. Don't trade him to even Talis Duncan. I don't really love that trade. Like, I wouldn't be moving him for someone who isn't a keeper or a cash out. So if you don't need him for round 18, you can move him. Otherwise, you're probably going to hold on to him at this stage. And then Nathan Lawson's the last one here, 266K. Is there any part of you that thinks Lawson will come back in round 18 and kill it?
No, but I'll probably hold him just to see. I need a send off for next week. I don't love it. Look, he's just disappointed. His stats didn't match up to his reserve grade stats. It didn't look great in real life after his first game where he was really dynamic. I think you at 266K, you might as well just hold him for a week and see what happens next week. But if he's not there next week, I'm moving him on for some sort of cash. The other thing is something like Lawson to Mason or Fino is also kind of attractive, and I can keep someone else. But with guys like Sharp to sell and Wong to sell, I don't have to. So I can just give Lawson the benefit of the doubt and give him one more week.
Yeah, he'd probably stay on my side too. But if I had the money, it depends on the trades I do. If I had the money, I might move him to Latu Fino and just make that leap and sort of lock in a guy who's going to be productive down the stretch. So if you're a Lawson owner, there is a big chance he does come back as well. I mean, Sagranis was quite good when he stepped into center. That's a bit of an issue, but with Val Holmes potentially out for Origin, we've got Tuapolotu dealing with some hamstring issues as well. There's a big chance that both those guys have some issues with playing round 18 for different reasons. So potentially Lawson sneaks back in. Yeah, I think Lawson, you hold him, but you don't expect much out of him. All right, Biz, thanks for jumping on today. That's buy, hold, sell, done and dusted. Any last words for everyone at home?
How many of you jumped onto Piacora last week? 66 minutes. We talked about the split between him and Jack G. 66 minutes and Jack G 29 minutes. So, look, he's wasn't a huge score, but you never know. We didn't talk about Piacora this episode. So, maybe to some of those people who jumped on, let us know. And let us know if you're ignoring all our buy, hold, sells and you're buying him this week anyway. Because he's actually not the worst option.
Brendan Piacura. Look, you could do worse than Brendan Piacura. Like he scored 28 and he went back in cash. So I'm worried about that 500K marker that we've sort of set in the sand. But hopefully he can get out of the purgatory of Casual Athlete Academy. Anyway, cheers for jumping on, Biz. Cheers, everyone at home. Good luck this week. Make your trades hard. Also, if you were patient with our tech issues today, it will be smooth next week. I promise. See you, everyone.